Family. We're told it's about blood, DNA passed from one generation to the next. But what truly makes a family? Is it genetic code, or is it something deeper, something built through tears and laughter, through bedtime stories and band-aids on scraped knees, through showing up when it matters most? Seattle, 2004. Elena Carter adjusted the fresh peonies in the crystal vase on the dining table of her Queen Anne townhouse. At 34, she had built what many would call a perfect life. A successful interior design career with Seattle's most elite clientele, a beautiful home featured in Northwest Living, and a husband whose rising star in corporate law was matched only by his political ties. She traced her finger along the carved mahogany of the antique table, a wedding gift from Andrew's parents. The table had 12 chairs. Someday she hoped they would fill them all with children and grandchildren, family dinners, holiday gatherings, the beautiful chaos she had always dreamed of creating. "You've been arranging those flowers for 10 minutes, Andrew said, stepping up behind her. His reflection joined hers in the ornate mirror on the wall, both of them the picture of Pacific Northwest success. She with her chestnut bob and tailored navy dress, he in a charcoal power suit and confident smile. He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "They look perfect, just like everything you touch." Elena leaned back against him. "Dr. Ramirez called. I have an appointment this afternoon." Andrew's eyes met hers in the mirror. "Good. Maybe we'll finally get some answers." Elena nodded, trying to quell the nervous flutter in her stomach. They'd been trying to conceive for 2 years with no success. The initial tests had been inconclusive. Today might bring answers, and hopefully solutions. "I have a good feeling about this," Andrew said, kissing her cheek before grabbing his briefcase. "The Carters have strong genes. My mother had 5 kids, remember? It's just taking a little time." "I hope you're right," Elena said, forcing a smile. "I've got the meeting with the Devereaux, then drinks with Councilman Blake's staff. I'll be home by 8. He checked his Rolex. "Text me after the appointment." Elena nodded. "Of course." As the door closed behind him, her smile faded. She placed a hand on her flat stomach. Empty. Maybe not for much longer, she hoped. She had already designed the nursery in her head a dozen times. Soft lavender walls, a hand-painted mural of a starlit forest, the antique crib she'd found at a Whidbey Island estate sale. She was ready. More than ready. Dr. Ramirez's office was decorated in calming blues and greens, but Elena felt anything but soothed as she sat across from the fertility specialist, trying to process the words falling like stones between them. "Ovarian failure," Dr. Ramirez said gently. "It means your ovaries have stopped producing eggs earlier than they should." "But I'm only 34, Elena whispered. "It's uncommon at your age, but it does happen. Your hormone tests confirm it." "I'm so sorry, Elena." "There must be treatments, medications, procedures." Elena leaned forward, her hands gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles whitened. Dr. Ramirez's eyes were kind but realistic. "With this diagnosis, the chances of conceiving naturally are less than 5%. Even with the most advanced fertility treatments, using your own eggs would be virtually impossible." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What about donor eggs? Surrogacy?" "Those are absolutely possibilities," Dr. Ramirez nodded. "Many couples build families that way. There's also adoption. You have options, Elena. Options." The word echoed hollowly as Elena drove home in a daze, tears occasionally blurring her vision. The beauty of Seattle's Volunteer Park, just beginning to bloom with spring, was lost on her. All she could see was the nursery that might never be. She pulled into the driveway 2 hours before Andrew was due home, time enough to process, to breathe, to figure out how to tell him. She made tea, letting the familiar ritual calm her slightly. Donor eggs, surrogacy, adoption. Different paths to the same destination. They could still have their family. When the door opened at 8:30, Elena was sitting in the living room, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. "Sorry I'm late," Andrew called out. "Blake's chief of staff is interested in backing my judicial nomination next year. If I go that route, it could be a game changer." He entered the living room, loosening his tie, then stopped when he saw her face. "Elena? What happened? What did the doctor say?" Elena looked up, taking in her husband's handsome face, trying to find the right words. "Andrew, I can't have children. I have premature ovarian failure. My body, it can't produce viable eggs anymore." Andrew stood very still, as if the air had solidified around him. What do you mean? You can't have children? I can't conceive, naturally. My ovaries have stopped working properly. There must be treatments, medications. I asked. The doctor says the chances are almost non-existent, even with treatment. Andrew ran a hand through his dark hair. We'll get a second opinion. Ramirez doesn't know everything. I've been researching all afternoon. The diagnosis is clear from my hormone levels. Elena stood, reaching for his hand. But there are other options. We could use donor eggs, or surrogacy. Or using another woman's eggs? Andrew interrupted, his voice strange. So, the child wouldn't be biologically yours? Something cold settled in Elena's stomach. No, not biologically. But I would carry the baby. It would still be your biological child. Andrew pulled away, walking to the window that overlooked their carefully landscaped yard. What about adoption? She asked quietly. His back stiffened. When he turned, his face had changed in a way Elena couldn't quite define. Adoption? Raising someone else's child? Our child, Elena corrected. Once we adopt, they would be our child. Andrew shook his head. You know my plans, Elena. The firm, the judicial nomination. Eventually, politics. I need a complete family for my image. Children are non-negotiable. This would still be a complete family. I need my own bloodline, Andrew said, his voice hardening. My legacy matters. The Carter name means something in this city. Elena stared at him, disbelief replacing her earlier distress. Are you saying you only want children if they're biologically related to you? I'm being practical. My career trajectory requires certain things. A traditional family is one of them. Traditional? Elena's voice rose. What about love? Commitment? For better or worse? Remember those vows? Andrew's face closed like a door shutting. I married you to build a family, Elena. A family with children who share my DNA. Children who will carry on the Carter name and legacy. So what are you saying? That because I can't give you biological children, our marriage is, what, void? I'm saying we want different things now. Elena felt as if she'd been struck. No, nothing has changed about what I want. I still want a family with you. I still want us. You can't give me what I need, Andrew said. His voice was eerily calm, as if he were discussing a business deal gone sour. I've been patient for 2 years. I've supported the appointments, the treatments. But I need to face facts. My biological clock is ticking too. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in Elena's throat. Your biological clock? You're 36. And I want to be a young, active father, not raising teenagers in my 50s. Elena's world was collapsing in on itself. The beautifully decorated room suddenly a stage set, as artificial as the man standing before her. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You're talking about our marriage, our life together, as if it's some sort of contract with conditions. In many ways, marriage is a contract, and the terms have changed. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of closet doors opening and closing. She found Andrew in their bedroom, methodically removing suits from hangers and placing them in a suitcase. What are you doing? Her voice was hoarse from crying herself to sleep. I'm going to stay at the Fairmont for a while until we figure things out. Figure what out? Whether you can stomach being married to a barren woman? The word was bitter on her tongue. Andrew continued packing. You're being dramatic. This is a practical matter. Practical? Elena grabbed a shirt from his hands. There is nothing practical about walking out on your wife the day after she receives devastating medical news. I'm sorry about your diagnosis. Truly, but it doesn't change my needs. Your needs? Elena's voice cracked. What about my needs? I just found out I can't have the children we've been planning for. I need my husband's support, not his abandonment. Andrew zipped the suitcase closed, his movements precise and controlled. I think we both need some space to consider our options. Options? Elena echoed hollowly. You mean your options, whether to stay with your infertile wife or find someone new who can give you biological children. Andrew didn't deny it, and that silence told Elena everything. When the divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later, Elena wasn't surprised, just hollow. In the cold conference room of Andrew's law firm, she sat across from the man she had loved for 7 years, watching him sign away their marriage with the same pen he used to close multi-million-dollar contracts. I married you to build a family, Andrew said, sliding the papers across the polished mahogany table, not to adopt someone else's children. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time she saw it, the ambition that burned brighter than any love he might have felt for her. Those strangers would have been our children, Andrew. Family isn't about DNA, it's about love. Andrew straightened his tie. You're entitled to your perspective, and I'm entitled to mine. The settlement was generous. Financially, Andrew could afford to be magnanimous. But the social divorce was brutal. Most of their friends, connected through Andrew's firm and political circles, chose sides. Elena found herself quietly uninvited from charity galas, garden parties, and the social calendar that had once filled her life. 2 months after signing the divorce papers, Elena saw them. Andrew and Catherine Wallace, the daughter of his firm's managing partner, at her favorite restaurant. She was beautiful, 10 years younger, looking at Andrew with adoring eyes. I heard she's already pregnant, the hostess whispered apologetically as she led Elena to a table far from the happy couple. They're announcing their engagement next week. Elena didn't finish her meal. She left cash on the table and walked out, passing their table without being noticed. A ghost in her own life. That night, she stood in the nursery that would never be. The room she had kept empty, waiting. She had to get out of Seattle. Away from the whispers, the pitying glances, the social circles that had closed ranks against her. Away from the possibility of running into Andrew and his fertile young fiancé. She called a real estate agent. The next morning, she sold the townhouse. 2 weeks later, she packed what mattered into her car and left the rest for the estate sale. Seattle had been her dream. But dreams change, or sometimes they're forced to. Chicago, 2005. The tiny apartment on Chicago's north side was nothing like the Queen Anne townhouse. A studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom where the door hit the toilet if opened too widely, and a view of the brick wall of the neighboring building. But it was hers. Paid for with the divorce settlement that would eventually run out. Elena sat cross-legged on her new IKEA futon, laptop open, scrolling through job listings. Seattle had been hers for the taking. Her client list included senators' wives, CEOs, and old money families renovating historical homes. Chicago was different. Anonymous. Starting over. She had tried calling her former clients for references, only to discover Andrew's reach extended further than she'd imagined. Somehow, word had spread that Elena Carter was difficult, emotionally unstable, unreliable. The whisper campaign was effective. 3 design firms had interviewed her, then mysteriously rescinded their offers. Fine, she muttered, closing the high-end design firm listings and opening a gig work site instead. I don't need them. 2 days later, she was helping a young couple in Wicker Park choose paint colors for their first condo. The job paid a fraction of what she'd earned in Seattle, but their genuine appreciation for her advice filled a small hole in her heart. You have such an eye, the wife said, clutching paint swatches. Our place is going to look amazing. Small jobs led to word-of-mouth recommendations. A paint consultation here, a furniture arrangement there. Elena created a website showcasing her Seattle portfolio. She printed business cards at a local copy shop. She hustled in a way she'd never had to before, taking jobs others might have considered beneath her expertise. 4 months in, she got a call from a local family-owned furniture store. We need someone to design room displays, the owner explained. Nothing fancy, just making our floor models look appealing. 20 hours a week, flexible schedule. It wasn't prestigious, it wasn't particularly creative, but it was steady income, enough to stretch her settlement money further. I'll take it, Elena said. The routine helped. Work, home, take-out dinner eaten while watching mindless TV. Occasionally a movie by herself, falling asleep to the unfamiliar sounds of Chicago traffic, waking up, repeat. She ignored the emptiness that greeted her each night, ignored the baby clothing stores she passed on her way to work, ignored the families in the park on weekends. This was her life now. She was adapting. Until the children's bedroom. We need a showcase room for our new children's furniture line, her boss explained, leading Elena to an empty corner of the showroom floor. Bunk beds, desks, toy storage. Make it magical. Something that'll make parents open their wallets. Elena nodded professionally. Any particular theme in mind? Something gender-neutral, whimsical but not babyish. These are for grade schoolers. For 3 days, Elena poured herself into the design. A woodland theme, with canopies of painted leaves overhead, a reading nook beneath the bottom bunk, starlights twinkling through the leafy ceiling, a desk built to look like a treehouse. Every detail perfect. When it was finished, she stood alone in the magical space she'd created. For children who didn't exist, who would never exist. Not for her. Something broke inside her. She sank onto the lower bunk, surrounded by the playful forest scene she'd painted, and sobbed. Deep, heaving cries that seemed to come from her very soul. Everything she'd been holding back for 6 months poured out at once, echoing in the empty store after hours. "Hello? Is someone?" Elena looked up, mortified, to find a petite Asian woman standing in the doorway, concern on her face. "I'm so sorry," Elena gasped, wiping her eyes. "I thought everyone had left." "I was dropping off flyers for the fundraiser," the woman said, gesturing to the stack in her arms. "The owner said it was okay." She hesitated, then stepped into the room. "This is beautiful. Did you design it?" Elena nodded, trying to compose herself. "It's for the new children's line." The woman sat beside her on the bunk bed. "I'm May. I'm a social worker with the Chicago Children's Center. We help kids in the foster system." She glanced around the room. "This would be a dream for the kids I work with." Elena wiped her eyes. "Thank you. I'm Elena, and I'm sorry for the breakdown. It's been a rough year." May handed her a tissue from her purse. "No apologies needed. We all have our moments." She looked at Elena thoughtfully. "Actually, I have a proposition. Our center needs help redesigning our visitation rooms, making them more welcoming for family visits. It's volunteer work, but maybe you'd be interested. You clearly have a gift." Elena blinked, surprised. Yes, I could help with that." "Wonderful." May handed her a card. "Come by next week. I'll give you a tour." The Chicago Children's Center was housed in a converted Victorian home in Humboldt Park. The exterior was cheerful, yellow with blue trim. But inside, the rooms were institutional and worn. Beige walls, mismatched furniture, fluorescent lights that hummed and occasionally flickered. "We do what we can with our budget," May explained as she showed Elena around. "But aesthetics aren't the priority when we're struggling to provide basics." Elena nodded, already mentally cataloging quick, inexpensive improvements. Paint would make a huge difference. Softer lighting, maybe some donated furniture. "Our visitation rooms are the priority," May said, opening a door to a space that was supposed to facilitate family reunification, but felt more like a sterile office. "This is where kids meet with their parents, often working toward reunification. We want it to feel safe, comfortable, like a home." "I can help with that," Elena said, ideas already flowing. "I could call some of my vendor contacts for donations." Over the next few weeks, Elena found herself spending more and more time at the center. She solicited paint donations from local hardware stores, convinced her furniture store boss to donate floor models that weren't selling, installed soft lamps and colorful rugs, painted murals on the walls. The work filled something in her that had been empty since Seattle. Here, her design skills weren't about impressing wealthy clients. They were about creating safety and comfort for children who had neither. "You have a gift," May told her one afternoon as they admired a newly transformed playroom. "Not just for design, but for understanding what these kids need. Have you ever considered foster parenting?" Elena's heart twinged. "I don't think I'm in a position to—" A commotion in the hallway interrupted her. Raised voices, a child crying. May's face shifted. "New intake, excuse me?" Elena followed her to the main office, where a harried-looking social worker was trying to calm 3 children, a boy around 7, a girl about 5, and a baby, maybe 10 months old, wailing in a carrier. "Their parents died in a car accident yesterday," the social worker explained quietly to May. "No relatives have come forward. We need emergency placement, 3 siblings." May frowned. "That's going to be tough. We don't have many homes that can take a sibling group this size." "They'll have to be separated," the social worker said, resignation in her voice. "The Changs might take the baby. The Whitfields have room for 1 more. And we'll find somewhere for the oldest." Elena watched the 2 older children clutching each other's hands. The boy's thin shoulders were rigid with tension as he tried to comfort his little sister. The baby's cries grew more desperate. "Can't you keep them together?" Elena asked. "They've just lost their parents." The social workers exchanged glances. "We try," May said gently. "But finding a placement for 3 children together, especially including an infant, is nearly impossible. Elena knelt to the children's level. The boy regarded her wearily, his arm protectively around his sister. "Hi there," Elena said softly. "I'm Elena. What are your names?" The boy hesitated. "I'm Michael. This is Zoe." He pointed to the baby. "That's Emma." "Those are beautiful names," Elena said. "I like how you're taking care of your sisters. That's really brave." Michael's chin trembled slightly before he squared his shoulders. "I promised Mom I'd watch out for them." Something shifted in Elena's chest, a door opening where she thought there was only wall. She looked at the three children, suddenly seeing her own reflection in their loss, their uncertainty, their need. The fear in their eyes was the same fear she'd felt signing those divorce papers, selling her home, starting over in a strange city. No one should feel unwanted. Not them. Not me. "What if," Elena stood turning to May, "what if they stayed with me, just temporarily, until you find a permanent placement for all three?" May's eyes widened. "Elena, that's a huge undertaking. 3 children, including an infant, and you haven't even been certified as a foster parent." "I could start the process right away." "I have a studio apartment," Elena said, surprised by her own certainty. "But I could move. Use some of my settlement money. I have space in my life, space in my heart." "It's not that simple," the other social worker began. "I know it's not simple," Elena interrupted, "but separating them isn't simple either. At least this way, they stay together while you search for a permanent solution." May studied her for a long moment. "Let me make some calls." By some miracle, or perhaps due to the desperate shortage of foster homes willing to take sibling groups, Elena was granted emergency temporary foster status. Her background check was expedited. Her apartment was hastily inspected. "This is highly unusual," the licensing worker told her. "You'll need to start proper foster parent training immediately and find a larger apartment within 30 days. Elena nodded, signing form after form, her hands shaking slightly with the enormity of what she was undertaking. "I understand." That night, her tiny studio crammed with borrowed cribs and air mattresses, Elena sat on the edge of her futon, watching 3 sleeping children, strangers who had suddenly become her responsibility. Michael slept rigidly, as if ready to wake at any sound. Zoe had finally cried herself to sleep, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit. Baby Emma, exhausted from hours of crying, snuffled softly in the portable crib. "What have I done?" Elena thought, panic rising. "I can't do this. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't have what it takes." Then Emma whimpered in her sleep. Without thinking, Elena reached into the crib, gently rubbing the baby's back until she settled. The simple action, so instinctive, calmed them both. "Maybe I don't know how to be a mother," Elena thought. "But I can learn. I can try. I can love them." And in that moment, something that had been broken began to heal. Chicago, 2005. "Miss Carter, are you aware of the challenges of adopting 3 children as a single parent?" The family court judge peered at Elena over her reading glasses, skepticism evident in every line of her face. Elena sat straight-backed in the courtroom. 9 months after the children had come into her life, what had begun as emergency foster care had evolved into something deeper, something permanent. When no relatives came forward to claim the siblings, Elena had made her decision. "I'm fully aware, Your Honor. I've completed all required parenting classes, home studies, and financial reviews." "Yes, I see that," the judge said, flipping through the file. "But your income is concerning. Interior design consulting is unpredictable, especially since you've only been established in Chicago for a little over a year." Elena swallowed. "I've been building my client base steadily. I've also developed an online design consultation business I can manage from home, which allows me flexibility for childcare." The judge nodded, unconvinced. "And your support system?" "The home study mentions no family in Chicago. I've built a strong network through the Children's Center, my church, and a single-parent support group," Elena explained. "May Chan has provided a letter detailing the community resources available to us." The judge studied her. "Miss Carter, I'll be frank. Courts prefer 2-parent households with stable, traditional incomes. You're proposing to raise 3 traumatized children alone, including an infant, on a freelance income. The odds are stacked against you." Elena leaned forward. "Your Honor, I understand your concerns. On paper, I may not be the ideal candidate." She took a deep breath. But these children have already lost everything: their parents, their home, their sense of security. The one thing they have left is each other. She gestured to where Michael, Zoe, and Emma sat with a court-appointed guardian. Michael has nightmares where he can't find his sisters. Zoe stopped speaking entirely when separated from them during therapy sessions. And Emma, she's learning to crawl now, and she crawls straight to Michael and Zoe every time. Elena's voice grew stronger. Your Honor, I may not have much, but I have enough love for all three of them. I have enough determination to overcome whatever challenges we face, and I have the fierce commitment to keep these siblings together, no matter what it takes. The courtroom was silent when she finished. The judge removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Miss Carter, this court has seen many well-intentioned foster parents. Good hearts aren't always enough for the realities of raising traumatized children. I know, Your Honor, but good hearts are where healing begins. The judge replaced her glasses, studying Elena for a long moment. I'm taking this case under advisement. We'll reconvene next week for my decision. 7 days of agonized waiting. 7 nights of watching the children sleep, terrified they would be taken away, separated, lost to her. Every night, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning herself. Was love really enough? What if the judge was right? What if she failed these children the way the system had failed them before? The weight of the possible no was heavier than anything she had ever carried. On the 8th day, Elena returned to the courtroom alone, hands trembling. After careful consideration of all factors, including the children's best interest in remaining together, the extraordinary circumstances of their placement, and Miss Carter's demonstrated commitment during the foster period, the judge paused, looking directly at her. This court grants the petition for adoption of Michael, Zoe, and Emma Sullivan by Elena Carter. Elena's breath left her in a rush. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. The judge offered a rare smile. Don't thank me yet, Miss Carter. Your real work is just beginning. And it was. The first year was a blur of exhaustion, financial anxiety, and moments of overwhelming doubt. Their new apartment, a modest 3-bedroom in a working-class neighborhood, strained her budget. Childcare costs for Emma while Elena worked threatened to sink them entirely until a neighbor, a retired teacher, offered to watch the baby at a reduced rate. I raised 5 of my own, Mrs. Abernathy said, expertly bouncing Emma on her hip. One more little one keeps me young. Elena worked frantically during the hours the children were at school and daycare. She took every design job she could find, built her online consultation business in the evening hours after bedtime. Some nights, she slept only 3 or 4 hours, running on caffeine and determination. The children's trauma manifested in different ways. Michael was hypervigilant, checking the locks multiple times each night. Michael hoarded food in his backpack, refused to let his sisters out of his sight at the playground. They're safe, sweetie, Elena would assure him. We're all safe now. You don't know that, he would reply, his eyes too old for his face. Bad things happen to people we love. Zoe had selective mutism, speaking only to Michael and gradually to Elena at home. At school, she was silent, communicating with nods and headshakes, frustrating her teachers and isolating her from potential friends. Emma, too young to understand what she'd lost, was nevertheless affected by the trauma around her. She was clingy, crying hysterically if Elena left the room, waking multiple times each night. Sometimes, in those endless nights of half-sleep and constant worry, Elena would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if love alone was enough. If hugs and nightlights and whispered reassurances could really rewrite the kind of grief these children carried in their bones. There were days Elena wondered if the judge had been right to doubt her. Days when the financial stress, the emotional demands, and the sheer physical exhaustion made her question everything. One Tuesday morning, 6 months after the adoption was finalized, everything fell apart at once. The client who owed Elena $2,000 for a completed project announced they were filing for bankruptcy. The washing machine flooded the bathroom. Emma spiked a fever of 103, and the school called. Michael had punched another boy who'd teased him about not having real parents. Elena sat on the bathroom floor, mopping up soapy water, while a feverish Emma wailed in the portable crib she'd set up to keep an eye on her. The school's voicemail played on speaker. The principal's voice stern as he requested an immediate conference. Her vision blurred, not just from tears, but from sheer mental fatigue, from the gnawing sense that she was failing at everything. She had built her life around holding this family together. But right now, it felt like everything was coming undone. Something inside Elena broke. She dropped the mop, buried her face in her soaking wet hands, and sobbed. A small hand touched her shoulder. Zoe stood there, 5 years old and solemn, offering a slightly dirty stuffed rabbit. "Bunny helps when I'm sad," she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. Elena looked up through her tears at the little girl, so wounded, yet finding the courage to comfort an adult. She accepted the rabbit, then opened her arms. Zoe crawled into them without hesitation. "We're going to be okay," Elena whispered. Not sure if she was reassuring Zoe or herself. "Somehow, we're going to make this work." That night, after Emma's fever broke, after a difficult conversation with Michael about better ways to handle bullies, after the washing machine repairman presented a bill that made her stomach clench, Elena made a decision. She couldn't keep working this way, stretched between too many clients, always scrambling. She needed to focus, to build something more sustainable, something she could do while being present for the children. At 2 a.m., fueled by desperation and inspiration, she launched a website, Room by Room Designs, virtual interior design for real budgets. The concept was simple. Clients would send photos, measurements, and their budget. Elena would create detailed design plans they could implement themselves, step by step, purchasing pieces as their budget allowed. She targeted young families, first-time homeowners, people who couldn't afford traditional interior design services but wanted homes that reflected their personalities. The price point was accessible, $250 for a room design, a fraction of her former rates, but something Elena could complete in a few hours after the children were in bed. To her shock, the concept took off. A mommy blogger featured her services, then a budget living website. Within 6 months, she had a steady stream of virtual clients, enough that she could be pickier about which in-person jobs to accept, focusing on those that offered the best pay for limited hours. Slowly, incrementally, life began to stabilize. There were still crises, Michael's nightmares, Zoe's silence at school, Emma's separation anxiety. But there were also triumphs. Michael's first A on a science project, a model of the solar system. Elena had stayed up all night helping him rebuild after the dog next door knocked over the original. Zoe's piano lessons, discovered by accident when she wandered to a neighbor's piano during a block party and picked out a simple melody by ear. Emma's first steps, taken confidently from Elena's arms to Michael's. The siblings' bond visible in the baby's determined toddle and the boy's proud tears. Sometimes Elena would pause mid-task, folding laundry, answering emails, preparing dinner, and find her breath catch in her chest. These moments of quiet joy, of children laughing in the next room, or Emma toddling across the kitchen floor, felt like small miracles. For a long time, she hadn't believed she would ever get here. And Elena's business, growing by word of mouth and online reviews, providing enough income that she could finally breathe a little easier. 2 years after the adoption, they celebrated with a trip to the Lake Michigan shore. A weekend in a small rental cottage, paid for with carefully saved design fees. As the children played in the shallow water, Elena sat on the beach watching. Michael helped Emma jump over tiny waves. Zoe meticulously built a sandcastle nearby. The sun was warm on her skin. The wind carried the smell of salt and sunscreen and childhood. Elena wrapped her arms around her knees, smiling to herself. This wasn't the life she had once imagined. No designer heels, no Beacon Hill dinner parties. But it was more than enough. It was home. My family, she thought with a sense of wonder. Not the family I imagined, but the family I was meant to have. That night, as she tucked the children into bed in the small cottage, Michael asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. "Mom," the word still gave Elena a thrill each time he used it. "Are you sad that you got stuck with us instead of having your own kids?" Elena sat on the edge of his bed, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not stuck with you, Michael. I chose you, all 3 of you, and you are my own kids." "But we're not like from your body," he persisted. "Some of the kids at school say adopted kids aren't real kids." Those children don't understand what makes a real family, Elena said firmly. Family isn't about whose body you came from. It's about who loves you, who shows up for you, who makes a life with you. She brushed his hair from his forehead. You and your sisters are the children of my heart. That's as real as it gets. Michael considered this, then nodded slowly. I'm glad we're your kids. I'm glad too, sweetie, Elena whispered. More than you can possibly know. Over the next decade, their little family flourished. Elena's virtual design business evolved into Carter Family Designs, a boutique firm specializing in family-friendly spaces. She hired 2 assistants, then 4. Then opened a small storefront showcasing sustainable furniture and accessories. The children thrived, each finding their path. Michael showed an aptitude for science and mathematics, his protective nature channeling into a fascination with how things worked, how to solve problems systematically. By high school, he was winning regional science competitions. His project on affordable water filtration systems took him to the national finals. Zoe's selective mutism gradually improved with therapy. Though she remained quiet by nature, her voice, when she did use it, came out most clearly through music. Her piano playing evolved from simple melodies to complex compositions, her emotions finding expression in the keys when words failed her. Emma, the baby who knew no life before Elena, grew into an exuberant child with an artist's eye. She carried a camera everywhere by age 10, documenting their family life, capturing the beauty in ordinary moments Elena might have missed. Their home, once a spare apartment furnished with second-hand finds, became a warm, creative space reflecting all their personalities. Michael's corner filled with books and scientific models, Zoe's with her keyboard and music sheets, Emma's with photographs and art supplies. Elena's design aesthetic held it all together, creating harmony from their beautiful chaos. Sometimes, when the children were asleep and the apartment was quiet, Elena would sit in the dim light of the kitchen and wonder if she had really healed. She had created love, laughter, safety, but the wound Andrew left behind would still ache on rare nights. A shadow, not of longing, but of having once been discarded. She had rebuilt herself, but she never forgot the fracture. Sometimes, Elena would pause in the hallway, quietly watching the children in their individual worlds. Michael tinkering with wires and tubes, Zoe lost in a melody, Emma carefully framing a photo, and feel an overwhelming swell of gratitude so intense it almost hurt. This was the life she had built out of ashes. And it was richer, more vibrant than anything she had once imagined. They never returned to Seattle. Elena built her new life firmly rooted in Chicago, letting her past remain in the rearview mirror. Occasionally she would see Andrew Carter's name in the news, made partner at a prestigious firm, appointed to a judgeship, mentioned as a rising political star with a perfect family by his side. Each time she would feel a momentary pang, not of regret, but of something like pity. For all his success, Andrew had missed this. The messy, imperfect, glorious reality of loving children, exactly as they were. For 10 years, Elena kept her past private. The children knew she had been married before, that her ex-husband lived in Seattle, that the marriage had ended badly, but she spared them the details, the rejection that still sometimes haunted her in quiet moments. She had built something beautiful from that heartbreak, something real, something that mattered more than any legacy or bloodline ever could. Some nights, she would lie awake with the weight of both love and loss pressed against her ribs, wondering if the children would one day want to know everything, if they'd understand the depth of the silence she'd carried. She didn't need to broadcast her story for the world to understand. She only needed to look across the dinner table, into the eyes of the 3 people who had saved her as much as she had saved them. Until the day it all circled back, like fate closing a loop. Chicago, 2023. Mom, have you seen my MIT brochure? I need it for the college counselor meeting, Michael called from his bedroom, the sound of drawers opening and closing, punctuating his question. Elena looked up from her laptop where she was finalizing designs for a children's hospital wing renovation. Check the magazine rack in the living room. You were reading it last night. At 17, Michael towered over her now, his lanky frame and serious eyes reminiscent of the solemn 7-year-old who had once appointed himself protector of his sisters. but a decade of security and love had softened his wariness into thoughtful confidence. Emma bounded into the kitchen, camera in hand as always. "Mom, I need you to sign this permission form. The school art magazine wants to use my photo series on urban renewal." "That's wonderful, sweetie," Elena said, accepting the form from her 15-year-old. Emma's artistic eye had developed into real talent, her photographs showing depth beyond her years. Zoe drifted in last, quiet as always, though no longer selectively mute. At 16, she moved through the world with a gentle grace, her emotions expressed most freely through the music she composed. "Don't forget I have the recital Saturday," she reminded Elena. "Professor Winters thinks a scout from Berkeley might attend." "It's on the calendar, highlighted in gold," Elena assured her, kissing the top of her head. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." The morning chaos of a house with 3 teenagers was a symphony Elena had learned to conduct. Permission slips signed, lunches packed, schedules coordinated, rides arranged. The frightened children who had come into her life had grown into remarkable young adults, each with their own dreams taking shape. "Found it." Michael emerged triumphantly with the MIT brochure. "Mom, I've been researching some other East Coast schools too. Harvard has an amazing bioengineering program. And there's this summer internship at Massachusetts General." Elena froze slightly at the casual mention of Boston. "Boston? I thought you were focusing on Chicago schools, or maybe California." Michael shrugged, tucking the brochure into his backpack. "Boston has the highest concentration of top science programs in the country, and the research opportunities are incredible. Chicago has excellent programs too," Elena said, trying to keep her voice light. "Northwestern, University of Chicago, I know, but I want to cast a wide net," Michael said. "Besides, I've never even been to the East Coast. It'd be a new adventure." Before Elena could respond, Emma chimed in. "If Michael goes to Boston, can we visit? I've seen amazing photographs of the historic architecture. It'd be perfect for my portfolio." Elena managed a smile that felt stiff. Boston. The city she once loved, that once broke her. The city where she lost a version of herself she thought would last forever. She could still picture that final day, her suitcase in hand, her body hollow, walking away from the home she had designed for a family that never came to be. Even now, 2 decades later, the name still stirred something raw. "We'll see. Boston winters are brutal. You might prefer California sunshine." Zoe, perceptive as always, studied her mother's face. "Mom, do you not like Boston? For some reason?" "No, it's not that," Elena said quickly. There are so many options to consider." The children exchanged glances, the silent communication they had perfected over years. "Well, I'm keeping my options open," Michael said finally. "The applications aren't due for months anyway." The morning routine resumed, the moment passing as the children gathered their things and headed out. Michael and Zoe to high school, Emma to her arts magnet program. Elena watched from the doorway as they walked toward the bus stop. Michael's arm casually draped over Emma's shoulder as he teased her about something, Zoe smiling quietly at their banter. "My whole world," she thought. When did they grow up so fast? The Boston question lingered through the day as Elena worked on client projects. She had successfully avoided the city for 20 years, building a new life, a new identity, as far from Andrew Carter as she could manage. The thought of Michael there, possibly crossing paths with Andrew or his family, the idea made her stomach tighten. Not from fear of confrontation, but from the ache of a history she had never spoken aloud. She had spent so long protecting her children from the pain of that chapter, she wasn't sure how to let them near it now. She pictured chance encounters, headlines, photos, or worse. Questions she wasn't ready to answer. Questions her children didn't know to ask. She pushed the thought aside. Michael deserved every opportunity. She wouldn't let her past dictate his future. That evening, Elena sat at the dining table reviewing contracts while the children worked on homework. The comfortable domesticity of the scene, Emma sketching, Zoe with headphones on, soothed her. As she worked on a composition, Michael's laptop open to research filled Elena with quiet contentment. Until Michael's voice broke the silence. "Mom, who's Andrew Carter?" Elena's pen froze mid-signature. She looked up to find Michael staring at his laptop screen, his expression confused. "What?" Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "Andrew Carter," Michael repeated. I was researching Boston legal internships and his name came up as a state judge. But then I found this old article about—" He trailed off, his eyes meeting hers. "About you and him, your wedding announcement, in the Boston Globe." The room went still. Emma put down her sketchbook. Zoe removed her headphones. "Michael, why are you researching my ex-husband?" Elena asked carefully. "I wasn't," he said quickly. "I swear. His name came up in an article about judicial internships, and when I was reading his bio, it mentioned his first marriage. The name Elena Carter caught my eye, so I searched both your names and found the wedding announcement. Then more articles." Elena set her pen down, her hands suddenly unsteady. "What else did you find?" Michael hesitated, glancing at his sisters. "There was a society page mention of your divorce, and then an announcement of his marriage to Catherine Wallace 6 months later, and their son's birth announcement 7 months after that." The familiar pain, dulled by years but never completely gone, throbbed briefly in Elena's chest. "I see. Mom," Emma's voice was tentative, "you never talk about your life in Boston or your ex-husband." "There wasn't much to say," Elena replied softly. "We married young. It didn't work out. I moved to Chicago for a fresh start." "But why didn't it work out?" Michael pressed. "These articles make it seem like you were this perfect Boston power couple. He was a rising star attorney. You were a sought-after designer for the city's elite. What happened?" Elena looked at the 3 faces watching her. Expectant, quiet. She had protected them from this truth, not wanting them to ever feel like second choices or replacements for the biological children she couldn't have. But they weren't children anymore. And secrets had a way of growing heavier with time. "The marriage ended because I couldn't have biological children," she said quietly. "I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. Andrew wanted children, his own biological children, to continue the Carter name and legacy. When he learned I couldn't provide that, he left." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Zoe's face went completely still. Michael looked thunderstruck. "He left you because you couldn't have babies?" Emma finally asked, her voice small. Elena nodded. "He said adoption wasn't an option. He needed his own bloodline." The words still tasted bitter, even 20 years later. "But that's horrible," Michael said, his hands clenching into fists on the table. "What kind of man does that?" "An ambitious one," Elena said. Elena said simply, "Andrew had a very specific vision for his life and career. A traditional family with biological children was part of that vision. When I couldn't fulfill that role, he found someone who could." "Is that why you adopted us?" Zoe asked quietly. "Because he made you feel like you weren't enough without children?" "No," Elena said firmly, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Never think that. I adopted you because the moment I saw you 3, I knew you were my children. My heart recognized you before my head caught up." She looked at each of them in turn. "Andrew's rejection hurt deeply, yes, but it also freed me to find you, to build the family I was meant to have." Michael was still frowning at his laptop. "So this guy just what? Traded you in for a younger model who could give him babies?" Elena winced. "That's a bit simplistic, but essentially yes. Catherine was the daughter of his law firm's managing partner. Their marriage was advantageous professionally as well as personally." "And now he's some big-shot judge?" Emma asked, indignation coloring her voice. "State court." "Yes," Elena said. "From what I've gathered over the years, he's been very successful." She didn't mention the occasions she'd seen his name listed as a potential candidate for higher appointments, or the photos of him standing beside senators and governors at fundraisers. Michael turned his laptop around, showing a webpage. "He's more than just a judge now, Mom. He's running for state senate." Elena felt a chill. The screen showed a campaign website, Judge Andrew Carter for Massachusetts State Senate Family, Integrity, Results. A smiling Andrew, older, distinguished, with touches of gray at his temples, stood with Catherine and 2 college-aged children, a son and daughter. The perfect political family. His campaign slogan is family values. Fiscal responsibility, Michael read, his voice hardening. "There's a whole section here about his commitment to the sacred bonds of parenthood and traditional family structures." Emma made a disgusted noise. "Hypocrite much? He literally abandoned his wife because she couldn't have babies. And here he is talking about character and standing by your commitments." Michael continued scrolling through the website. It says he's hosting a major campaign fundraising gala at the Ritz-Carlton Boston next month. All the state's political elite will be there. Zoe, who had been quiet, suddenly looked up. Did you ever wish you could tell people the truth about him? About what he did? Elena considered the question. In the early days, yes. I was angry and hurt, but over time I realized living well was its own reward. Building this family with you three has been more fulfilling than any revenge could ever be. The children exchanged another one of their looks, silent communication that sometimes excluded her. What? Elena asked, recognizing the signs of a brewing idea. Nothing, Michael said too quickly. It's unfair that he gets to reinvent himself as this family values champion when he threw away his marriage the minute it got tough. Life is often unfair, Elena said gently, but we can't let that embitter us. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Elena noticed her children were unusually quiet for the rest of the evening. When they retreated to their rooms, she could hear the murmur of voices, moving between each other's doorways, discussing something intently. A week passed. Michael stopped mentioning Boston schools at the dinner table, though Elena noticed MIT brochures and Harvard viewbooks still scattered around his room. The children seemed to have dropped the subject of Andrew Carter, much to her relief, until she found the invitation. She was gathering laundry from Michael's room when she spotted it on his desk, an elegant cream-colored card with gold embossing. The committee to elect Judge Andrew Carter cordially invites you to a gala reception at the Ritz-Carlton Boston. Her heart stuttered. Why would Michael have an invitation to Andrew's fundraiser? She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. It appeared legitimate, not something printed from a website. Beneath it was another document, an acceptance email for a summer internship with the Carter for Senate campaign. Elena sank onto Michael's bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. What was happening? Had Michael applied for an internship with her ex-husband's campaign? Why would he do that? She found a third document, an email confirmation from a Boston hotel, reserving a room for 3 nights. The dates coincided with Andrew's gala. She was still sitting there, the papers in her lap, when Michael came home from school. Mom? He stood in the doorway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His eyes fell to the documents in her hands, and his expression shifted from surprise to determination. I can explain. Please do, Elena said quietly. Michael set his backpack down and sat beside her on the bed. After what you told us about him, about how he treated you, we couldn't just let it go. We, Elena asked, though she already knew. Michael nodded. Zoe, Emma, and me. We talked about it, and we came up with a plan. A plan, Elena repeated flatly. I applied for the campaign internship using my academic credentials. With my science awards and GPA, I was a perfect candidate. They don't know I'm connected to you. I used Dad's last name, Sullivan. Elena stared at him. Michael rarely referred to himself by his birth father's surname. You deliberately deceived them to get this internship? I didn't lie about my qualifications, Michael said defensively. I just omitted our connection. And the hotel reservation? The gala invitation? Michael took a deep breath. The campaign is giving interns tickets to the gala. It's a big networking opportunity. Zoe arranged to perform at the gala through her piano teacher, who has connections in the Boston arts community. And Emma applied for a photography position through her arts program, documenting the event for a local magazine. Elena felt lightheaded. So all 3 of you have manipulated your way into this event. To what end exactly? We're not planning anything dramatic, Michael assured her. We want him to see us, to see the family you built without him. The children, he said, weren't good enough because they wouldn't carry his precious DNA. Elena stood, pacing the small bedroom. This isn't your battle to fight, Michael. What happened between Andrew and me was 20 years ago. But he's still benefiting from the image he's created, Michael argued, running on family values when he showed none. It's not right. Life isn't always right or fair, Elena said. That doesn't mean we should let people like him succeed by lying about who they really are. Elena turned to face her son, seeing in his passionate defense echoes of her own younger self. And what exactly do you hope to accomplish? Publicly embarrass him? Create a scene? That could backfire badly. We don't want to create a scene, Michael said. We just want to be there, to be seen, to be a silent reminder of the family he rejected. He paused, choosing his words carefully. And maybe, we thought you might want to be there too, to show him that his rejection didn't break you, that you built something beautiful, without him. Elena felt tears threatening. The love behind their misguided plan touched her deeply, even as the potential for disaster alarmed her. You should have talked to me first. Would you have agreed? No, she admitted. Probably not. That's why we didn't tell you. I need to think about this, Elena said, gathering the papers. And I need to talk to your sisters. That evening, Elena called a family meeting. Emma and Zoe admitted their parts in the plan, both equally determined and unapologetic. He hurt you, Mom, Emma said fiercely. He threw you away like you were nothing, and now he's pretending to be this paragon of family values. You've done everything for us, Zoe added, her quiet voice strengthening with emotion. You kept us together when the system wanted to separate us. You worked so hard to give us opportunities. You deserve vindication. Elena looked at these three remarkable young people, their faces alight with protective love for her. How could she explain that Andrew Carter's opinion had ceased to matter to her years ago? That the family they'd built together was vindication enough? But looking at their determined faces, she realized this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about them, their identity, their journey. Their need to face the man who had deemed adoption an unacceptable way to build a family. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it with dignity. No scenes, no confrontations, no manipulations beyond what you've already set in motion. Three faces brightened. You're agreeing? Michael asked, incredulously. I'm considering it, Elena corrected. But first, I want to know exactly what each of you has planned. No surprises. As they laid out their scheme, Michael working behind the scenes as a campaign intern, Zoe playing piano during the gala reception, Emma photographing the event, Elena had to admit it was clever. They had found legitimate ways to be present at the gala, using their genuine talents. And what happens when he sees me? Elena asked. Because he will recognize me, even after 20 years. The siblings exchanged glances. That's kind of the point, Emma said. We want him to see that you're successful, confident that you've built an amazing family, the very thing he said you couldn't have without him. Elena sighed. And you don't think this is petty? Holding on to a 20-year-old grievance? It's not petty to stand up for the truth, Michael argued. He's marketing himself as something he's not. If he hadn't gone into politics, maybe it wouldn't matter. But he's asking people to trust him based on values he himself betrayed. Elena looked at her three children, so passionate, so protective, so determined to right a wrong they felt had been done to her. This wasn't really about Andrew, she realized. It was about them, claiming their place in her story, asserting that they were a real family, as real as any biological one. All right, she said finally, but we do this my way. No ambushes, no public confrontations. We go. We are seen. We leave with our dignity intact. Agreed? Three heads nodded solemnly. And if at any point I say it's time to go, we go. No arguments. Agreed, they chorused. Elena felt a flutter of anxiety. After 20 years, she was returning to Boston, to the world she'd left behind, and she was doing it on Andrew Carter's territory. It was madness. Yet something in her responded to the challenge. Maybe it was time to close this circle, to face the man who had once deemed her unworthy because she couldn't bear his children. To show him the family she had built without him, not for revenge, not even for vindication, but for closure, for her children, and perhaps, finally, for herself. Boston, 2023. The Ritz-Carlton Boston glittered with old money elegance, the kind Elena had once navigated with practiced ease during her first life in this city. Now, standing in the hotel suite she shared with her daughters, she smoothed the midnight blue gown she'd chosen for the evening, fighting the flutter of nerves in her stomach. You look beautiful, Mom, Emma said, adjusting her own simple black dress, professional enough for her role as event photographer. Elegant enough for the gala setting. Zoe nodded in agreement. Elegant in a silver gown, appropriate for a performing pianist. You don't look nervous at all. Elena smiled, ruefully. Then my acting skills have improved with age. Michael knocked and entered, looking startlingly grown up in his dark suit. For a moment, Elena felt a pang. He resembled his birth father in profile, the father he'd lost too young. But the determined set of his jaw, the protective way he looked at his mother and sisters, that was all his own. "The campaign team is already downstairs," he reported. "Judge Carter and his family are doing a private meet and greet with the major donors before the main event." He checked his watch. "Zoe, you should head down. The musicians are gathering." Zoe nodded, picking up her small evening bag. "Remember, I'm playing during the cocktail hour and then again when the speeches begin," Zoe reminded them. "And I'll be circulating, taking candids," Emma added, checking her camera. "The Boston Arts Quarterly editor is expecting a full photo essay." Elena marveled at her children's composure, their careful planning. "And you, Michael, what's your role tonight?" "I'll be helping coordinate the donor introductions, making sure Judge Carter's remarks are loaded into the teleprompter, and generally being an efficient, invisible presence." He grinned. "The campaign manager already loves me, said I'm the most organized intern they've ever had." Despite her anxiety, Elena felt a surge of pride in these three remarkable young people. "Just remember our agreement. We're here to be seen, not to create a scene. Dignity above all." They nodded solemnly. Michael and Zoe departed first, heading downstairs to assume their positions. Emma lingered, adjusting her camera strap. "Are you sure you want to do this, Mom?" she asked quietly. "It's not too late to back out." Elena took a deep breath, considering the question. Was she ready to face Andrew after all these years? To stand in a room full of Boston's elite, many of whom had known her in her previous life? To risk the pain of old wounds reopening? She thought of Andrew's campaign website, the sanctimonious language about family values and commitment. She thought of the three children who had planned this entire operation out of love for her, out of a desire to be acknowledged as a real family. "I'm sure," she said finally, "some circles need closing." The ballroom was transformed for the evening, glowing with subtle lighting that highlighted the architectural details while flattering the wealthy, influential attendees. Elena paused at the entrance, taking in the scene. Crystal chandeliers, white-jacketed servers with trays of champagne, Boston's power brokers in dark suits and designer dresses, all gathered to support Andrew Carter's Senate bid. From her position, she could see Zoe at the grand piano, her slender fingers moving gracefully over the keys as she played a tasteful classical piece. Emma circulated with her camera, professional and unobtrusive as she captured candid moments, and there, on the far side of the room near a small stage, was Michael, clipboard in hand, conferring with an older woman who appeared to be the event coordinator. They fit in perfectly, for children, as if they belonged in this rarefied world. And then she saw him. Andrew Carter stood in the center of a small circle of admirers. Still handsome at 54, his dark hair now distinguished with gray at the temples. He laughed at something someone said, his hand resting casually on the back of his wife, Catherine. Still elegant, still beautiful, still the perfect political spouse. 20 years. 20 years since he had looked her in the eye and told her she wasn't enough, because she couldn't bear his biological children. 20 years of building a life without him, of proving him wrong in every way that mattered. Elena took a glass of champagne from a passing server and stepped fully into the ballroom. She didn't approach Andrew immediately. Instead, she circulated slowly around the periphery, taking in the atmosphere, occasionally nodding to a face she vaguely recognized. A few people looked at her with momentary confusion, a familiar face they couldn't quite place. She was studying a large campaign poster, Carter for Senate, Family Values, Fiscal Responsibility, when she felt someone's gaze on her. Turning slightly, she found Catherine Carter staring at her from across the room, her perfect smile faltering as recognition dawned. Elena nodded slightly, raising her champagne glass in a small salute. Catherine's eyes widened. She leaned toward Andrew, murmuring something in his ear. Andrew turned, scanning the crowd, until his eyes found Elena. The shock on his face was almost worth the price of admission. For a long moment, their gazes held across the crowded room. 2 decades fell away in an instant. Elena saw the flicker of disbelief, the momentary uncertainty, the quick calculation behind his eyes as he tried to determine what her presence meant. Then his political training took over. He whispered something to Catherine, patted her arm reassuringly, and began making his way through the crowd toward Elena. She stayed where she was, letting him come to her. As he approached, her breath caught, not from longing, but from the sudden flood of memory. The wedding, the hospital room, the silence after he walked out. She reminded herself she wasn't that woman anymore. She wasn't here to beg or explain. She was here to stand her ground. Her heart pounded, but she kept her expression composed, taking a small sip of champagne as he approached. "Elena," he said when he reached her, his voice controlled, but tension evident in the set of his shoulders. "This is unexpected." "Hello, Andrew," she replied, pleased that her voice remained steady. "You look well. Success agrees with you." His eyes scanned her face, searching for clues to her intentions. "Thank you. You look remarkable. I didn't realize you were back in Boston." "Just visiting," she said. "When I heard about your Senate campaign, I was curious." "I see." His politician's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Well, it's kind of you to support the campaign, though I have to admit, given our history, I'm a bit surprised." "Are you?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "I've always believed in acknowledging the truth, no matter how uncomfortable." Andrew's smile tightened. "Perhaps we could speak privately. There's a quiet room just off the—" "I don't think that's necessary," Elena interrupted smoothly. "I'm not here to disrupt your evening, Andrew. I'm here to witness it." For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe even shame, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Before he could respond, the event coordinator approached, Michael a half step behind her. "Judge Carter, the major donors are assembled for the photo opportunity. Then we'll begin the formal program in 10 minutes, the coordinator said, gesturing toward the stage. "Thank you, Margaret. I'll be right there." Andrew's eyes never left Elena's face. "Is there anything else you need, Judge Carter?" Michael asked, his voice perfectly professional, despite standing face to face with the man who had abandoned his mother. Andrew glanced at Michael briefly. "No, thank you." He paused, clearly searching for the young man's name. "Michael Sullivan, sir. I'm one of your campaign interns." Andrew nodded distractedly, his focus returning to Elena. "We'll continue this conversation later," he said quietly. "After the speeches." "I look forward to hearing what you have to say about family values," Elena replied, her tone mild but meaningful. A flicker of unease crossed Andrew's face before his political mask slipped back into place. He nodded curtly and moved away, following the coordinator toward the stage. Michael remained behind, his eyes meeting Elena's. "You okay?" he murmured. "Perfectly," she assured him. "Go, do your job. I'm fine." As Michael returned to his duties, Elena found a seat near the back of the room where she could observe without being obvious. From this vantage point, she could see Catherine Carter watching her, concern evident in her flawless features. The formal program began with introductions from the campaign chair, followed by a glowing endorsement from the current governor. Throughout it all, Andrew maintained his composed, statesmanlike expression, though Elena noticed his eyes occasionally scanning the crowd, finding her, then moving away. And then Zoe began to play. The campaign had clearly requested something dignified, yet emotionally stirring as background for Andrew's entrance to the podium. But Zoe had chosen a different piece, a haunting, complex melody that Elena recognized immediately. It was Pachelbel's Canon in D, the piece that had played as Elena walked down the aisle at their wedding, 23 years ago. Andrew recognized it too. As he approached the podium, his step faltered, almost imperceptibly. His eyes found Zoe at the piano, then darted to Elena, confusion evident. Elena kept her expression neutral, though her heart swelled with love for her daughter's subtle, powerful choice. No one else in the room would understand the significance, but Andrew knew. The reminder of vows made and broken hung in the air between them. "Distinguished guests, friends, and supporters," Andrew began, his practiced voice warm and confident, despite his momentary hesitation. "I stand before you tonight, humbled by your support and inspired by your faith in our shared vision for Massachusetts." As he continued his speech, outlining his platform and qualifications, Elena observed the man she had once loved. He was good at this. The right blend of gravitas and approachability, conviction and humility. "At the heart of my campaign are the values that have guided my life and career," Andrew continued. "Integrity, responsibility, and above all, family." He gestured toward Catherine and their 2 adult children, seated in the front row. "My wife Catherine and our children, Brandon and Jessica, remind me daily of what truly matters in this world. the bonds that connect us, the commitments that define us. Elena felt a sharp pang. Despite herself, the hypocrisy was breathtaking. In today's world, we need leaders who understand that strong families build strong communities, Andrew continued, who recognize that the promises we make to each other are sacred. His voice trailed off as his eyes caught movement at the back of the room. Emma had moved to a better position for photographs, her camera raised, lens pointed directly at him. For a moment, Andrew seemed transfixed by the young woman with the camera, something about her face causing him to lose his train of thought. He glanced down at his notes. We need leaders who understand that character is revealed in how we respond to challenges. His eyes drifted to Michael, who stood near the teleprompter, his stance attentive but his gaze direct and unflinching. Again, Andrew faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. Leaders who believe that our legacy is defined by. He stopped again. His gaze returned to Zoe at the piano, then to Elena in the audience, then back to Emma with her camera. The audience began to murmur, concerned by the uncharacteristic stumbling of the usually polished candidate. Elena saw the moment it clicked. The moment Andrew realized who these young people were, what their presence, alongside her, meant. His face paled slightly, his knuckles whitened as he gripped the podium. Our legacy, he continued, his voice slightly strained, is defined by our actions, not just our words. The irony of his statement hung in the air, at least for the 5 people who understood the full context. Andrew recovered, finishing his speech to enthusiastic applause, but his eyes kept returning to Elena and the 3 young adults whose presence had so unsettled him. The pianist, the photographer, the attentive intern. 3 young faces that shouldn't be familiar, but somehow were. Connected to the woman he had discarded 20 years ago because she couldn't have children. As the formal program concluded and the crowd dispersed into mingling, Elena remained in her seat, watching Andrew work the room with Catherine at his side. His politician's smile remained firmly in place, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept tracking her children's movements around the room. Finally, as she had known he would, Andrew made his way to her, this time with Catherine beside him. Elena, he said, his voice low and controlled. Could we speak privately now? Elena considered the request, then nodded. Of course. They moved to a small anteroom off the main ballroom, Catherine following, despite not being explicitly invited. When the door closed behind them, Andrew's composure slipped slightly. What exactly are you doing here? He demanded. Is this some kind of stunt? Elena raised an eyebrow. I'm attending a public campaign event, Andrew. There's no law against that. And those young people, the pianist, the photographer, the intern, they're with you, aren't they? This is some kind of coordinated ambush. They're my children, Elena said simply, and they wanted to see the man who once decided that adoption wasn't good enough for his family image. Catherine's eyes widened. Your children, you adopted? Yes, Elena said, turning to face her. 3 siblings who had lost their parents. They would have been separated in the foster system, but I couldn't let that happen. Not when I had enough love for all of them. Andrew ran a hand through his hair, his political mask slipping further. So you brought them here too? What? Embarrass me? Disrupt my campaign? No, Elena said calmly. They came here because they wanted to see the man who rejected their mother for being infertile. The man who claimed to value family while abandoning his wife at her most vulnerable moment. The man who now campaigns on family values and sacred commitments. Catherine turned to Andrew, confusion evident. What is she talking about, Andrew? Andrew's jaw tightened. Elena is referring to the end of our marriage. Ancient history that has no relevance to. He left me the day after I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. Elena said to Catherine, her voice gentle despite the harsh truth of her words. He said he needed biological children to carry on his name and legacy. That adoption wasn't acceptable. Catherine stared at her husband, shock replacing confusion. Is that true? You left her because she couldn't have children? It was more complicated than that, Andrew said stiffly. We wanted different things. The marriage wasn't working. The marriage was fine, until you discovered I couldn't give you biological children, Elena corrected. Within 6 months, you were engaged to Catherine. Within a year, you had a son on the way. Catherine stepped back slightly, as if seeing her husband in a new light. You never told me that was why your first marriage ended. It wasn't relevant, Andrew insisted. It was a different time in my life. The door opened and Michael entered, his expression concerned. Mom, is everything okay? Elena smiled at her son. Everything's fine, Michael. Judge Carter and I were just clarifying some history. Andrew looked between them. Your name is Michael? Michael Sullivan Carter, the young man replied. My birth name was Sullivan, but Mom legally added her name when she adopted us. The door opened again and Zoe and Emma slipped in, protectively flanking their mother. And you must be the pianist, Andrew said to Zoe, his voice strained. And the photographer. I'm Zoe, she said quietly. This is our sister Emma. Andrew looked at the three siblings, then at Elena, understanding and disbelief warring in his expression. So, this is why you're here, to show me that you built a family after all. We're here because we wanted to see the man who thought biology was more important than character, Michael said, his voice level but intense. The man who calls himself a champion of family values while having abandoned his wife when she needed him most. You have no right to judge me, Andrew began, his voice hardening. You don't know anything about. We know everything, Emma interrupted. We know you married Mom when she was 25. We know you were building a political career. Even then, we know that when she couldn't have biological children, you discarded her like she was defective, and married a younger woman who could give you the heirs you wanted. Emma, Elena said gently, placing a hand on her daughter's arm. That's enough. Catherine was staring at Andrew as if seeing a stranger. Is this true? All of it? Andrew's face flushed. It was a different time in my life. I was younger, more focused on certain traditional expectations. You told me your first marriage ended because of irreconcilable differences, Catherine said, her voice hollow. That you'd grown apart. That was easier than explaining the complexities of what? Of the fact that you abandoned your wife because she was infertile? Catherine interrupted. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. God, the irony. Andrew frowned. What are you talking about? Catherine glanced at Elena and the children, then back at her husband. Her face was pale, but her eyes had sharpened, not with shock now, but clarity. The speeches, the interviews, the promises. You've built a whole career on the image of family man, of principled leader. And yet this is the foundation you built it on? We should continue this conversation elsewhere. A knock on the door prevented further discussion. The campaign manager poked his head in. Judge Carter? The Boston Globe reporter is waiting for your interview, and several major donors are asking to speak with you. Andrew straightened his tie, political mask sliding back into place. I'll be right there. He turned to Elena, his voice low and urgent. This isn't the time or place for this conversation. There is no conversation, Andrew, Elena replied calmly. We didn't come for confrontation or scandal. We came for truth. Your version of the truth, he muttered. Tell me anything I've said that isn't factual, Elena challenged. Did you or did you not leave our marriage specifically because I couldn't have biological children? Did you or did you not tell me that adoption wasn't an option because you needed your own bloodline? Andrew's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, Elena said quietly. Go finish your campaign event, Andrew. We won't disrupt anything further. As Andrew turned to leave, Michael spoke up. Judge Carter, I'll be tendering my resignation from the internship, effective immediately. I apologize for any inconvenience. Andrew paused, studying the serious young man. You're a gifted organizer. It's a shame to lose your talent. I've learned a lot about politics during my brief time with your campaign, Michael replied, his meaning clear. More than I expected. Andrew nodded stiffly and left, Catherine following after a final, conflicted glance at Elena. As she exited, Catherine turned back one last time, her expression no longer one of confusion, but something quieter, almost an apology. Elena met her gaze, steady and calm. No words were needed. There was a reckoning in that look, and maybe a reckoning long overdue. When the door closed, Emma was the first to speak. Did you see his face when he realized who we were? Worth it, Zoe said quietly. Totally worth it. The way he stumbled during his speech about family values, she added with quiet satisfaction. It was like watching cognitive dissonance in real time. Elena looked at her children, their protective stances, their righteous indignation on her behalf, their unconcealed pride in having orchestrated this confrontation. Love overwhelmed her. "I think we've accomplished what we came for," she said softly. "It's time to go." "But the gala isn't over," Emma protested. "Don't you want to see what happens next?" Catherine seemed pretty shocked by the truth. Elena shook her head. This was never about destroying Andrew's marriage or campaign. It was about facing the past and being seen. "We've done." "Mom's right," Michael said. "Ever the practical one. We've made our point, with dignity, just as we agreed." As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Elena took one last look around the opulent room that represented the world she had once belonged to. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above polished floors, laughter and murmurs echoed in the background. But none of it touched her anymore. She felt no regret, no longing for the life she might have had, only gratitude for the one she had built instead. In the lobby, as they waited for their car, a voice called out, "Elena, wait!" They turned to find Elena Carter approaching alone, her elegant composure slightly frayed. "I need to speak with you," she said. "Privately, if possible." Elena hesitated, then nodded to her children. "Go on up to the room. I'll be there shortly." When they were alone, Catherine's careful mask crumbled slightly. "I don't know what to say. I had no idea about why your marriage ended." "It was a long time ago," Elena said. "You have nothing to apologize for." "Don't I?" Catherine's laugh was hollow. "I was the replacement, the fertile younger model." "You were 22, Elena said gently. "You fell in love with a charismatic man. You didn't destroy my marriage. It was already over." Catherine looked at her with something like wonder. "How can you be so gracious after what he did? After what I unknowingly participated in?" Elena considered the question. Her mind flicked through images, nights crying alone, empty cribs, signed divorce papers. Then, just as quickly, the soft weight of Emma sleeping on her chest. Michael clutching her hand on the first day of school. Zoe playing music in the sunlit living room. Because bitterness is a poison that only hurts the one who carries it. And because the life I built after Andrew is more beautiful than anything I could have imagined with him. Catherine nodded slowly, then looked around to ensure they were alone before speaking again. "There's something else you should know, something ironically fitting." She took a deep breath. "I've been struggling with infertility for the past 5 years. Elena's eyes widened. "What?" "We've been trying to have a third child," Catherine explained. "Andrew wants a campaign baby, perfect for his family man image, but it hasn't happened. We've tried treatments, specialists. I was diagnosed with secondary infertility, no clear cause." "I'm sorry," Elena said, meaning it. "That's a painful road." "Andrew's been less than supportive," Catherine continued, her voice tight. "He keeps saying we're not trying hard enough, that there must be something else we can do." She paused, then added in a voice so quiet it barely carried above the ambient hum of the lobby, "Sometimes I wonder if he sees me the way he once saw you, broken, replaceable. He refuses to consider that it might not happen." "And how do you feel about that?" Elena asked gently. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Inadequate, broken, all the things I'm sure you felt 20 years ago." She wiped a tear quickly. "The irony isn't lost on me. The man who left his wife for being infertile is now facing the same issue, with the replacement." Elena felt a wave of empathy for this woman who had unknowingly stepped into a pattern, one now repeating itself. "Catherine, your worth isn't defined by your fertility. No woman's is." "I know that intellectually," Catherine said. "But emotionally, when your husband makes it clear that's what he values most." Elena had no answer to that. She had faced the same devastating realization 2 decades earlier. "Your children are remarkable," Catherine said after a moment. "Protective, intelligent, accomplished. You've clearly done an extraordinary job raising them." "Thank you," Elena said. "They're the light of my life." "And clear proof," Catherine added quietly, "that family isn't about DNA, it's about love and commitment." They stood in silence for a moment. 2 women connected by the same man, the same painful rejection 20 years apart. "What will you do?" Elena finally asked. Catherine straightened, composure returning. "I don't know yet, but seeing you tonight, seeing the family you built, the strength you found, it's clarified some things for me." She offered a small, genuine smile. "Thank you for that unexpected gift." They parted with a handshake that felt like the closing of a circle. As Elena watched Catherine return to the gala and her husband's side, she felt no triumph, no vindication, only a quiet sense of peace. Upstairs, her children waited anxiously. What did she want? Emma demanded the moment Elena entered the room. To apologize, Elena said simply, and to share something private that isn't mine to disclose. Michael studied her face. Are you okay? Was this whole thing a mistake? Elena looked at her 3 children. The family she had built from love rather than biology. The proof that Andrew Carter had been wrong about what mattered most. No, she said softly, not a mistake. A completion. A circle closed. 1 week later, back in their Chicago home, a package arrived. Inside was a Boston newspaper with a small headline, State Judge Carter suspends Senate campaign, cites family priorities. The accompanying note, handwritten on cream stationery, read simply, some truths once seen cannot be unseen. Thank you for your grace. Catherine Elena tucked the note away, a small smile playing at her lips. Not revenge, not even justice, exactly. Just truth, finally acknowledged. And for her and her children, that was enough. Elena Carter's journey from heartbreak to healing reminds us that true family values aren't about political slogans or perfect photos on campaign websites. They're about showing up, about choosing love when it's difficult, about creating bonds that transcend biology. Dear friend, life has a quiet way of circling back, of giving us moments, not of triumph, but of quiet clarity. Elena and Catherine's final exchange wasn't about blame or vindication. It was about 2 women seeing themselves in each other's pain and recognizing that healing often begins with truth, spoken aloud, finally heard. The Stoics teach us that we don't control what happens to us, only how we respond. And Elena's grace, even in the face of old wounds reopened, is a reminder that dignity isn't loud, it's steady. We don't need perfect beginnings to write beautiful endings. Sometimes the family we build from brokenness is the one that saves us in return. You are not defined by what was lost, but by what you choose to love anyway. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters.